All right, review of the Bassani True Dual exhaust for the Yamaha Road Star 1700. I got Bassani. Well, actually, I was going to make my own pipes. I like making my own stuff, but I knew that this bend right here was going to be a pain in the tuchus, and I was already really busy doing other stuff, so I thought, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna spend the money, and that way I'll just be able to bolt these things right on, continue with my life, and I won't have to, it'll be done. Well, so here's let's see, we'll begin at the beginning. The Bassani instructions. It doesn't look too bad here, but then we get into here. I mean, these pictures, they look like they were sketched by a grade school student and then copied and then copied and then copied and copied and copied and copied. I mean, you can barely tell any, like there's an arrow right here, but you can't, I mean, okay, yeah, in this particular one I can tell that it's going to that part of the banjo fitting on the brake line, but I mean, these things are just kind of gnarly, like in a bad way. Like you can't really tell what's going on in them. You got to really, anyhow. And then the instructions are not very specific or helpful at all. Let's see. You will need to supply remove the two plugs. Remove the plugs from the two holes located above and below the swing arm pivot. I'm picturing, oh, okay, plastic plugs, we're going to have to remove them. So swing arm pivot, well, I already have this plate on here, their mount, we'll get to that in a minute. So here's the swing arm, and it has a plug on it, but there were no plugs above or below. It took me a little while to figure out that they're calling these Allen head bolts plugs. That made me even more nervous, because now I'm thinking, all right, this thing's written in China, but we muddled through that. Look at the fantastic quality of this weld that doesn't even appear to need to be there. Like this piece could have been made out of one piece of steel. But I figured, okay, well maybe they make a bunch of these for different bikes, and then this part. They specific for different models, or I don't know. I can't see that it would be cheaper to pay somebody, the nickel per hour that they must have paid them to weld that, versus just, cutting different pieces of steel. But then somebody else I talked to on one of the forums said, oh yeah, mine are just one piece. That's weird. So not only are the welds ugly, but on both of them, they left the end open, so now water can get in there and start rotting them from the inside, which is pretty spectacular. I like that on both sides, as you can see. So, and I know that once the mufflers get bolted to these things, it'll be better, but I mean, just really? All right, I guess. Oh, let's see. So the quality, the chrome finish is good on the heat shields. It's kind of iffy on the pipes, but you can't really see the pipes anyway once the heat shields are on. So not, no complaints there. Let's see. Oh, so I got that all put together. You have to fish through, this thing, and under the heat shield there's a slip joint right here. Like this pipe inside behind the heat shield has a male part that fits inside a female part, and you have to put this through first without the heat shield on, and then slip that, and then tighten the T-nut, and then align everything and then crank it down. Well, I couldn't for the life of me get that in there, so I ended up having to take it all apart, and even with them taken apart, it wasn't even close. I'd get like a 1/4 inch, maybe a 1/2 inch if I pushed real hard, but the slip joint is like 1 inch long. So I called, let's see, so here's another thing. So I bought these things from what I assumed was a licensed, or whatever dealer on eBay, called Sport Bike Parts 2U, number 2, letter U, something. So I contacted them and said, hey, my slip yoke's not fitting. They said, oh, that's terrible. Call Bassani. Bassani, listen to me. Biscotti. What the who? You know what I'm talking about. Bassani. These guys that have been doing this since 1969 and still can't get it right. So they said, oh, call Bassani. So I was like, oh, well, that's fantastic customer service. Just pawn it off on the manufacturer rather than, deal with it with the manufacturer and then get back to me. But whatever. So I call Bassani. Bassani says, oh, yeah, we don't deal with any of those guys on eBay. They undercut our prices all the time. They don't provide any kind of support. So, which makes me wonder, well, how do they get your kits at a price that's low enough that they can undercut you guys if they're not getting them from you? Where are they getting them? Anyhow, I told the guy the problem, and he's like, oh yeah, that's a common problem. Just, grind it out until it fits. I said, okay, well, if I grind it, then, that's going to void my chrome warranty. And if you've researched these things at all, that's the only kind of warranty these things have, is if the chrome goes bad and then, they say, oh, well, you must have, used an inappropriate cleaner, you must have this, you must have that. And he said, oh, don't worry about it. Just tell him Bob said it was okay. So you guys are my witness. You can't see it, but I had to grind the hell out of it in here. And if it starts rusting in there and turns my whole thing all rusty, Bob from Bassani said that it was okay. All right. So I got that all done. Then this guy hit my heat shield. So, not a big deal. Okay, we got a spline shaft on this end, we got a spline shaft on that end. So all we got to do is, pull both of them, rotate it, put both of them back on, fine tune it with this if you want, whatever. Well, of course, I couldn't get in here with an Allen wrench, couldn't get past here with a T-handle. I had already put my side covers back on. I wasn't about to go back into this thing, so I took some of my Allens, I cut them down so that I could just barely get in there, doing 1/1000th of a turn at a time, and same deal here. Got it all pulled apart, got it, put back on, but they don't mention anything about that in the instructions. There's something else they didn't mention in the instructions either. I